and have them rape her and then film her. Imagine what pain she must have gone through.
Violence get involved. It could be physical abuse, it could be psychological abuse, could be even financially abuse.
So trauma bonding is defined as the victim actually gets emotionally attached to the abuser.
Issues trusting other people because of what she has gone through.
He would be calling her like names as like dog and all of that, like to kind of make her feel small.
Also, we tend to please the abuser.
Hi everyone, welcome to our 5th episode of HeyJuni Unplugged. We are very glad that you are back with us and are following us and are following our content. Today I have Pradnya, another listener of HeyJuni. She's been with us since I think 8 months already, and she's wonderful. She's doing such a great job, and she has a very big heart. She has so much empathy, and she is also someone with a lot of experience in, like her life and in her work life as well. Thank you for being here, Pradnya. And Nora, again, our head of domain. You probably know her well by now. Very glad that she's back on this episode. So HeyJuni is a place actually where we welcome everyone to join us for this, honest and sincere conversations where we don't avoid, but we address our own emotions as well, where we open up and where we also invite everyone to open up about their life challenges as well. So if you are if you resonate with our mission and if you would like to learn more about HeyJuni, visit us at www.heyjuni.com. Today we're going to talk about the something that is very, very profound, which is intimate partner violence. And it is also something that I feel personally connected with. So we hope today to be able to, talk and share not just about our professional knowledge, but also about our own experiences, what we have seen or what we have witnessed. Maybe to start with, I would like to share with you a story that I read on the news lately, and I guess you have heard about it as well. So the story is about this French lady who found out overnight, basically, that she was abused by her husband for the past 10 years. And the abuse is in a very brutal way. So he actually drugged her, gave her, medication so she would be sleeping. And then after that, he would invite strangers to their homes and have them rape her and then film her. And after she found out about it, she made a very clear cut and statement to not let herself be the victim here, because she doesn't want to feel the shame, and she doesn't want to give herself the shame that, women probably usually feel when they are sexually abused. So she actually went very open about it. So she talked about it, and even when they went to court, I think it was last week, she allowed, it to be accessible to the public, so everyone can follow, what's happening in court, what's, told in court, because she doesn't want to hide away from this trauma. But at the same time, she also said she wants to be the advocate for other women to be able to speak out and to separate themselves from the abuser. So my question here that I would like to ask is she an exception? As in, I feel like she's very strong, very damn strong, but is she an exception or is she the norm?
I think she is the exception, but I think two things I would see is I think when she was found out, she was notified by the police. So I assume the authority got involved. So her husband probably got removed from her when she realized what her husband did to her the past decade. So she is a brave woman by standing up to tell the world that she is not ashamed. But speaking of that, it doesn't mean she is not currently suffering. I think she will need a very long journey to heal her traumatized experience. Even though she is standing up against her husband to tell the world, I'm not the victim, to advocate for all the women out there. So she brings the hope to the women that are currently in the violence relationship or were in a violent relationship but still suffering. How brave she is, but still, I think she also needs the support for her mental health for a long time. Because
I think adding on to what Nora mentioned, like I think the source of support, it seems that she does have the support of her children. Yeah, and I think that's very important, family support, when it comes to whether this woman choose to seek help and go ahead with like deciding whether to take action. Yeah, I think she was also, I think just like, repeating like what Malia and Nora have shared, like she's incredibly brave. Definitely it's an exception. I think she must have thought about many implications. I think there's still a lot of suffering, even though she may not have been conscious when the offense happened. I did read that she was having like certain symptoms of trauma. Yeah, that she was losing hair, and she had no idea what was going on. And I believe like her body knew. Right. So, and now she has to process that. Yeah, and I think it will not be easy for her. Yeah, so I think one additional point is also that she was able to recognize that it was abuse and violence. Yeah, some women may not be able to even take that first step of recognizing that is
That's true.
abuse. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, imagine, right? Like sometimes we face stress, I don't know, like exam stress, or pressure from our work, and that already make us feel something, as in we're losing our sleep, we're not able to have a good appetite, we're not able to like feel happy, right? And let's say, I mean, of course, like feelings are very subjective, but in this case, having stress at work is definitely less severe than being raped by hundreds of strangers. She's been raped by 90 men she never met in her life, and being betrayed by her husband, right? So imagine what pain she must have gone through. And just like, I mean, when I imagine myself being stressed over simple things on a daily basis, and this woman is facing this severe trauma, what she actually has to go through right now, and for the next years, and probably for the remaining, years in her life. Yeah, you're right. So that leads me to the next question: why? When she's an exception, if she's an exception, then what make other women unable to leave? So there is this term called trauma bonding. Have you heard about it before? Yeah. So trauma bonding is defined as when, like the victim actually gets emotionally attached to the abuser, even though there is abuse, but even with the abuse existing, they get emotionally attached to their abuser, and that makes them unable to leave. So what are the things you think could lead to this like trauma bonding, or what are the signs actually of trauma bonding?
So I think often like this, in this episode, we are talking about intimate partner violence. It often occurs in the context of a relationship. Yeah, and a relationship, involves many feelings. I'm sure it does not start off like that. So they would have certain sense of hope, love before like they might have recognized the red flags. And I think when they see the red flags of perhaps psychological abuse, they might excuse it. Yeah, they might excuse it, saying that the perpetrator might be going through a tough period, some stress. Yeah, and I mean, because there is still that element of love and hope that this person will change. So they excuse the red flags. And eventually in the cycle of violence, it tends to escalate over time. And I think usually like by the time that they realize they have invested too much into the relationship, or perhaps they might have they might be dependent in other forms because of they are worried, you know, like I want my children to have a 2-parent household. I'm not working, so who will support me and who will support my children if I leave? There's too much at stake. So I think that comes with it. In the trauma bonding, because there's other feelings involved, I think it's difficult for them to recognize. And I think sometimes it's also because of their own past experience in relationships or what they have seen in their childhood, modeling over perhaps their own parental relationships. They might not even be able to recognize that this is a trauma bond.
And they may feel it's normal. This is what my father did to my mom, or this is what my grandparents in between them. So I think you're right that it's first step is they might not even aware of being abused. Right? So I think the other thing is also the it's kind of going through the emotional highs and lows when they are, I think in the relationship, their honeymoon stage. Right? Everything's good, you are so beautiful, I love you so much, the intense emotion. And then when things doesn't get right, violence get involved. It could be physical abuse, it could be psychological abuse, could be even financially abuse or verbal abuse. Right? Like, you are so useless, you know, it's all your fault. You know, that the reason I punch you or the reason I'm mad is because you didn't do your job as a wife. You didn't clean your dishes. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. So it's all your fault. So the situation escalated, and then later on, maybe because the husband, or we can find excuse, he's drunk, he's too stressed at work, and after he's awake, being sober, like, I'm so sorry for you, you know, he will buy flowers home and show the love, like, I'm so sorry, I won't do that again. The woman probably feel like, you know, see, he knows he did something wrong. I should forgive you, and we should still have, like you said, the hope of change. He won't do that again. So I think those intensive, dramatic love and abuse, it's kind of like a roller coaster in relationship. And
so it's like abuse and then love bombing. Like I think there's this term called love bombing. So they abuse you, and then after that period of abuse, they then, you know, like send you gifts, apologize, promise not to, you know, like do this ever again. You know, like instill like positivity into you for that period of time, and then of course, like, you know, you tend to gain hope and believe that this person might change. Right, so then you allow this person to continue with,
and you feel rewarding when he buy you gift, when he show love, when he say, I feel rewarding. Yeah, see, I know he still loves me. So you feel being rewarded by he showed the reconciliation. I think the other issue is the longer you are in a relationship, we tend to feel like, I already invest so many years in this relationship. I am married my husband for 10 years, 20 years. I invested so much time. I did so well. I contribute everything, my life, to the family, to the children, to my husband. I don't want to leave. Why should I lose it? I don't want to lose it. I already invested.
Psychologically, there's also a term called freeze response. So what it means is that when you are, let's say, in a critical situation, you tend to have this fight or flight thing, where you have a lot of adrenaline in your body, and the adrenaline response is to give you that energy, that belief that you can make it through and you can fight it through. So in an abusive relationship, there's also this psychological term called freeze response, because the victim usually focuses on the positive aspects of the relationship in order to survive.
Right.
So whenever a negative thing happened, we tend to focus on the positive things so that we can move on. So this is exactly what happens to, you know, victims of abuse in an abusive relationship, is they do that, and over time it becomes a habit. It becomes instilled in their thinking, in their personality. So with each cycle of abuse, as in abuse, love bombing, abuse, love bombing, every time they would just focus on the love bombing and the positivity and the promises, the hope that they have in order to continue with the relationship, right? Because they want to continue with the relationship. And that's how they actually survive these abusive relationships.
Also, we tend to please the abuser, try to justify their behaviors by pleasing them. Like, it's all my fault. I should do this. I should do better. I think there's also a reaction to the trauma. And I think the earlier we mentioned about isolated, they want you to isolate. So the more you are isolated, that means you have to rely on your spouse more and more, socially, financially, and everything. You need to depend on that person more and more. That also make it difficult for you to leave the situation, because you don't have anybody. So you have less and less support other than your partner who is abusive and manipulative.
No, that's right. And I think it goes back to the cycle of abuse that Pradnya said earlier. You know, like when you are abused over many years like that, through the tactics that the abuser uses, you get used to it too. Like you get kind of like immune to certain things.
I maybe just want to add on, like sometimes I think definitely trauma plays a huge part in terms of recognition and choosing whether to stay or leave. I also feel, you know, like external factors play a big part. Yeah. So like because we all exist, you know, in systems. Yeah. So like I think the family system, the community that they are in, what the media portrays, all this will directly or indirectly affect like whether the woman chooses to stay or leave. So like in terms of like family, like perhaps like they might have reached out and then they might have been told that this is your husband, like you can't get a divorce. Yeah. Certain traditional or conservative values, collectivist mindsets, I think, and I mean a lot of like I think like in the Asian context specifically, like there's a lot of cultural nuances about maintaining our face in the community. Like what will people say among like so many Asian cultures, Chinese, Malay, Indians. It's these themes are like similar across many Asian cultures. So like all these issues of face might also affect, like they do not want their family to be seen in a negative light just because they want to seek help for themselves. And often it's very difficult for them to see it as mutually exclusive things. It goes together. So when the decision that they make has many implications, and this cannot be discounted. Like the external factors of financial dependency. Sometimes in these situations there might be substance abuse, mental health, which makes things even more complicated. And I think sometimes like the lack of support from the family, the community, and like the society, like even the formal support systems, it might cause them to want, like left with no other choice, or feel like that they have left with no other choice compared to staying in the relationship.
And I think the cultural nuances that you demonstrated just now, I feel that it's still very prominent. So I have a friend, an acquaintance. She's from Korea, South Korea, and you know, like South Korea is quite a progressive country in terms of technology and K-pop culture and all of that. But in terms of marriage and relationships and preserving the traditions in family structures, I feel like there is a lot of work that need to be done there, because when she divorced her husband, and obviously, I mean, like in our friends circle, we know that he's the abusive one. When they divorced, she was the one that was the talk of town. She was the one who got the blame, as in she wasn't able to keep the family intact. Oh, because she wasn't able to give him children, or she wasn't the one doing a good job as a wife because she was working and she was focused on her career and she was not focusing on him and the family. The abuse actually went on even after divorce. Like the pain and the trauma continue even after the relationship or the marriage ended.
Even in my culture, they will still feel like if you are, it will bring you a bad karma if you advise people to get divorced, even though you know they are in an abusive relationship.
Interesting.
I think sometimes even it's a new concept, even for me, is in the past maybe decades, is even you are a married couple, if it's not a consent sexual, some consent sex, it still counts as sexual abuse. Right? But I think in a lot of culture, it's you are a couple. It's your responsibility to please your husband.
There's so much victim blaming. I do feel that, I truly empathize with this woman. Like sometimes you might, even when I recognize that it's an issue and I want to seek help and for the situation, which may not always involve leaving the relationship, but it's so difficult to seek help because of what other people think. And other people feel like it's a personal issue, so they do not want to step in, but I'm asking for help. Yeah, so I think it makes it so difficult. The shame, the stigma. I mean, even, beside the cultural nuances, I think generally there's like gender role socialization and like patriarchal values across the world, right? Which has that same ideas of husband as the head of the household, the decision maker, the main breadwinner, and wife as a supportive figure, which I mean has been ingrained into us since young. And I think it takes a lot of courage to break against that. Yeah.
And I've seen my patients, they actually have a job, financially independent, very high educated. However, the threat from the husband will say, I will kill you, or I will kill myself, or I will kill the children, I will kill your parents. I know where they live. That threat, so it make those women, even though we see them from other people, like you are financially independent, you have house, high self-esteem, maybe high education, you can leave.
So there's this woman who was very, very close to me, and she used to be a very educated, confident young lady when she married him. But over a span of like years and a few decades, she turned from a confident, young, vibrant lady with lots of friends who's outgoing and happy to becoming someone who doesn't want to socialize anymore. She doesn't want to speak to anyone. She is afraid of talking to people. And she is fearful of men because she was abused throughout her entire life by her husband. And the abuse isn't just like physical, as in beating her up, and in like the most brutal and painful way that you can imagine. Emotionally, psychologically, he would pick on the most painful things to make her feel small, to make her feel worthless. As in, she grew up without a father because her father died in the Vietnam War. And she grew up kind of like by herself because her mom was too busy kind of making ends meet.
Yeah.
So he would be picking on that and would be saying, because you never had a father, that's why you are like how you are. You don't know how to respect your husband and the man in the house. So he would be picking on these things to make her feel guilty. He would be calling her like names as like dog and all of that, like to kind of make her feel small. So like over the years, like with all the psychological, financial, physical abuse, she actually became a different person. She's not like the person she was before anymore. It shaped not just your life, but also it changes you as a person. That is the saddest thing.
I think it always starts off something not too big, something minor, and then it goes into the whole tension building, explosion, honeymoon phase again. And it sounds like this person that you know was just stuck in many rounds of that happening until it changed her personality.
Or there's a turning point for her to finally decide, I need to leave, I need to change the cycle.
Yeah, but it's difficult to have that turning point for her because like Pradnya said, it started small and it becomes bigger. And each time, you know, the abuse gets bigger. So with each cycle of abuse, she gets used to it.
I think of something else that like I think a lot of women face, which is like the abused mother's dilemma. Like, so, you know, how the behavior of the husband in undermining like this person's role as a mother, ability to parent, it's actually all part of the power and control tactics. But she, being someone who identifies, you know, like one of her main roles is as a mother, like that would erode slowly at her self-esteem, over time. So I think like this abused mother's dilemma on like when they decide, you know, like that they need to leave this relationship or make a change, at which point like is staying with this person or being in this abusive cycle like causing them more harm than perhaps like that hope that they have of a two-parent household, giving their children like a happy, complete family. I think that is like a lot of women in this kind of situation, they face that. And something I think they may not be able to see is that they are not, like the children are actually very intuitive. They can see what is going on, and that they know that everything is not normal. But I think as the person, the woman who feels that they need to make that decision, they may not be able to see that actually my children know that this is already wrong.
I think another reason is it's hard for them to foresee the life after they get divorced.
I'm just imagining if I was the person, I would, if I look outside of the relationship, I would see nothing else. Because why? I don't have any friends anymore. Because my husband actually made me focus on the relationship, and over the years, I've actually lost all my friends. I don't have any friends. And maybe even my relatives or my extended family, they have been made into thinking that, oh, this woman is crazy, like this woman is weird. And actually her husband, you know, he's beating her up, but there's a reason for it. I shared with you about this woman that I know, right? And it happened to her the same way. Like I told you guys, right? Like she had a lot of friends, but after, you know, years being in this relationship with this man, she lost all her friends. She was isolated, completely isolated, because whenever she actually met with her friends, there's something that happens that made him angry, and he would make a situation for her very, very hard to maintain relationship. He would be making up stories about her, like creating lies around her, so that people actually distance themselves from her. And she feels like, oh, there's no one else in this world that believes me anyway.
Being in an abusive relationship, you are pretty much like walking on the eggshell every day. You have to always be mindful and scared. Would I do something to trigger them, or do I do something wrong so my husband gonna beat me? So they are so, I think they startle, and they become so cautious about everything they do, everything they say, because I don't want to trigger my husband. And they kind of internalize it because I did something. So my husband will be mad at me because I didn't clean the house. So I think they kind of internalize the blame to themselves. And I think the other thing is how they view themselves, the self-esteem. They feel like I deserve that. Or when people are saying that you are worthless, you are not good enough, everything, and the verbal abuse or physical abuse, right? We kind of agree, and we feel like, oh, maybe I'm useless. See, I cannot even do anything. I cannot even protect my children. So they blame themselves, and the self-esteem, how they view themselves, are very powerless. They don't see they can do things. Financially, socially, they rely on their husband. So they feel like, I need my husband. He's the king. She actually feel he is the king in a family. So that tells you how little she feels she is. And she probably, a lot of times they don't even feel they can achieve something. They just do things day by day as a routine, controlled by the husband, within the permission of the husband. Not to mention about the freedom. Right? They probably forget what freedom is.
So then what are the reasons, like strong enough reasons, that enables women to successfully leave and get out of the relationship?
I think sadly, a lot of times it's the spouse betray them. And that's, it's the husband, they have someone else, mysteries outside, and they say, okay, I don't want you.
So it's actually the abuser's choice, not the woman's choice actually to leave.
Sometimes, yeah, I think a lot of times it could be that happen. And it could be easier because the abuser decide to don't want you. But it doesn't mean the process will be easier.
You are fine with everything, even though you are suffering, but it's okay. You're just going to continue with it if it's just about you. But once the abuser actually touches the children, that's where I feel like if it was me, there would be no way for me to accept that.
Right.
Yeah, I think, Malia, like what you shared, I think it's also shown in the literature as well as the cases that I see. Sometimes the trigger or the push for them to really seek help is when the children are affected. Yeah, because then, their identity as a mother, which they hold on so strongly to, it comes to the forefront, like protection of the children, protecting the safety of the children is important. Yeah, I think another, usually another push factor is often also when the violence escalates. Yeah, so I think usually when the violence, and usually violence does escalate. Yeah, so usually when the violence escalates from psychological, emotional to physical, I think that's when it's very clear that it's not just in my head anymore. Like there's literal, like what Nora shared, like literal choke marks, literal burn marks, or literal bruises on my body that has been verified by a medical professional that it's not natural. Yeah, and then often that's when, that's the switch that, okay, this is too much and has crossed the line and it's time for me to leave. It's unfortunate that has to be the push factor, but often I think in many cases it is like that when it affects the children or when it escalates. Yeah. And often it's when they are in a crisis, or perhaps what Nora mentioned, like betrayal, like perhaps they are kicked out of the house by their own husband, and they need basic needs like shelter, or assistance for their children. That's when they turn to formal support. Because there's no one else. They have already been so isolated because of the cycles of power and control that in a crisis, I really do need this tangible assistance, like financial or shelter. And that's when they come and seek help for their formal, to formal support. Yeah.
There is actually support out there. maybe my family, my friends, they have been unaware of this, or they have not been able to help me, but there is tangible support out there, and I'm actually not alone. And I think, when that happens, and when there is some sort of emotional distance, psychological distance, and physical distance towards the abuser, because there needs to be a critical amount of time where you actually can be away from the abuser in order to get away from all of the thoughts that you are used to. Actually, once you have that critical amount of time to be away from your abuser, physically, psychologically, and emotionally away, that allows you to actually come to realization that I'm actually okay being alone, or I'm actually getting help from outside, the support that I need. I can actually do it. I don't need to go back, right?
And I think sometimes living physically away from the abuser, it doesn't mean once might not be successful. It could be we are still in that abuse cycle. Maybe we move back. And maybe I still accept to meet him outside the house, last chance, or rebuild, still have the hope. But I think a lot of times we saw it from the news. A lot of bad things happen during those incidents.
Yeah, and I think, sadly, right, this is a matter that is not just about, this women's mental health, but it's also about the practical aspect of it, that, like you said, like the help is not just about being emotionally there for them, but they need guidance. When you think about this situation, there is legal involved that they need help with. There is medical assistance that they need, psychological and mental health support, and then there's also kind of like a financial support as well, because when they want to be out of this relationship, they need to be able to support themselves financially.
There's the Maslow's hierarchy. So if you don't address the basic needs of, like, I think what you mentioned, financial, social, legal, housing, you have to address these needs first before you can, like, delve deeper into the trauma, delve deeper into how can I move forward in a safe manner. You have to address, like, their current needs first, and that also can help us to build trust and rapport with this woman who maybe has issues trusting other people because of what she has gone through. If she can see that, hey, I'm here to help you, then she'll be more open to, over time, sharing more about what she has gone through. And I guess that is a long and slow journey to, like, empowerment over time.
Right, and also seeking therapy support from a professional. We could use CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to restructure their cognitive belief, or challenge their distorted belief about their relationship, and those hope of change for change. Right? It could be it's distorted, so they need that professional support to restructure their belief. Also, they may need trauma-informed therapy to process the trauma they have been through. And also the other resource that as a professional can support, because we need to distinguish the role between the family support, social support, and the professional support.
You are right, because as we address this problem many times, right, with friends and families, they are biased. They are biased because, I mean, they could be, like supporting this female, this woman who is being abused, and say like, hey, I think you should break up with the relationship. Like you and him, both of you have kind of like, this toxic relationship for so long. So like when they hear these things, it's very triggering sometimes. Like, why is it my fault that I contribute to this toxic relationship? I know, that friend probably has good intentions of telling me, giving me the advice to break up, to end it, but I'm, there is this kind of flavor that I hear in there that I don't feel comfortable with hearing these things. I don't feel supported. So friends and family, they have their biases too, and having a bias doesn't allow you to actually feel validated and feel empowered sometimes to take certain actions that you need to take.
I think it's so important to acknowledge and validate, like the ambivalence that they go through and the challenges that they have, and also the multiple considerations that they have before they even choose to see it as an issue, before they choose to seek help, before they decide like from who they should seek help, whether like family or friends or formal support, like the whole ambivalence in terms of like, yes, this is a relationship that they have invested so much into, and that they are grieving the loss of the relationship, grieving the loss of having a hope of a complete family. I think like just like sometimes perhaps like they might feel not supported or judged because this ambivalence or like the other side beside the toxic part of the relationship is not recognized. But it's recognizing that yes, this relationship did serve a purpose and you did love this person, but right now, given like what has happened, like this is not healthy anymore. So it's okay to acknowledge what was, and but also affirming what is right now.
Thank you for joining us on another episode today. We're very glad to be able to address this very important topic that that is so meaningful to all of us, and hopefully meaningful to you as well. If you have any comments, any suggestions, anything you would like to share with us, please reach out. Or if you have suggestions for other topics that you would like us to talk about, please write us an email at contact@heyjuni.com. We are looking forward to hearing from you.